Hello everyone and welcome back to day 2 of SPIRITISMx 2021. I'm Adam from Kardec Group, and if you did not have the opportunity to watch the talks from yesterday, you missed some very fantastic things. And you can catch up on blocks 1 and 2 a little bit later on the Kardec Group YouTube channel. Now, we have 8 more fantastic talks lined up for you today, and we'll have block 4 a little bit later, but right now we have block 3, and let's see who we have with us today. We have... That's better. We have Frederico Gouveia. We have Pekka Kaarakainen, Alexander Moreira-Almeida, and Suzana Simões. They'll be with us today. Fred is from America, Pekka from Finland, Alexander from Brazil, and Suzana from America as well. So, as a quick reminder as to who we are. So we are Kardec Group from the UK, and we run 2 Spiritist group, the Spiritist Society of Windsor and Maidenhead and the Spiritist Society of Bicester. And you can contact us at any time to find out more information about us on our website, www.kardec.org.uk, or via Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and of course, via our YouTube channel. Now, we have a very interesting podcast called Insightfully Speaking, looking at the world from a Spiritist perspective. And this is available on all good podcast systems, as well as a video version on YouTube. And Frederico has been one of our guests for that show itself. And today, like I said, we will have 2 blocks of events. Each block will have 4 talks plus a round table where everyone can send their questions to our guests. Oops, I've missed off a slide. I do apologize. Just to mention that this is the 3rd year of SPIRITISMx. Our first event was in 2019, our Spiritist seminar, and last year, SPIRITISMx 2020, What a Wonderful World, and you can find the videos of those on the Kardec Group YouTube channel. Now, we love to have people interacting with us during the event, so please reach out, say hello, bonjour, ni hao, salam, whatever you want to say, and we'll get back to you and give you a shout out as soon as we can. And if you have any questions for our guests, please send them. And of course, social media. So please give a like, give a subscribe to the Kardec Group YouTube or Kardec Group Facebook page, and indeed, go and give a little bit of love to all our fantastic partners who are also streaming this on YouTube as well. So let's jump in straight away with the first talk of the day. So with us now we have Alexander Moreira-Almeida, who'll be talking about science and spirituality. Let's try that again. Who'll be talking about science and spirituality, a conjunctive paradigm. Alexander is from Juiz de Fora in Brazil and is a medical doctor trained in psychiatry and cognitive behavioral therapy, with PhD in health sciences and postdoctorate in religion and health. He is associate professor of psychiatry at the School of Medicine of the Federal University of Juiz de Fora, and is founder and director of the Research Center in Spirituality and Health, NUPES, in Brazil. Alexander is an author of more than 150 papers published in peer-reviewed journals. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will hand you over now to Alexander.
Hello, good morning or good afternoon. It's a pleasure being here. And I'd like to discuss with you about science and spirituality, the possibility of integration in scientific exploration. To start about spirituality, what does spirituality mean? We can understand spirituality as the relationship with the transcendent realm or reality. Basically, all spiritual traditions around the globe talks about something that transcends our ordinary material world. And not only this, but this transcendental aspect of reality is the ultimate truth or reality. Because of that, it's sacred. So the idea of spirituality is dealing with the transcendental aspect of reality of the universe, and this aspect is sacred, is essential. And of course, this spirituality can be seeked in a community that share values, beliefs, and practices, and this community it is what we call religion. And spirituality has always been with us as human beings since the beginning of times. This is the Lion Man. This is one of the first artistic sculptures found in prehistory. It was almost 40,000 years ago. And it probably talks about some cult practice. This is a man with a head of lion, and there is some evidence that is related to some cults and spiritual practices. But not only this, but throughout human history, you can see here, for example, some of the highlights of human art throughout history were devoted to spirituality. Since the Parthenon, the pyramids, Notre Dame Cathedral, Taj Mahal, Pietà, Michelangelo's. So all of them show how the seek of the transcendence, the seek of spirituality can build many of the most impressive things that humanity has ever done. But not only in art, but even also in knowledge, for example. The foundation of universities, like University of Oxford, for example, it was founded in the Middle Ages by the church, seeking truth. It's interesting because even the motto of the university, Dominus Illuminatio Mea, means the Lord is my light. So, and even the Harvard University was also founded in connection with spiritual aspects. But of course, there is also the dark side. We can have religious wars involved in the seeking of spirituality. And even one of perhaps the greatest song, the greatest music ever produced by humanity, the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven, was strongly influenced by his spiritual quest. And even the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, this idea has a strong base and foundation in religious and spiritual values. But is it still relevant in current secularized world? This is the most recent data that we have that shows that 84% of humanity reports having some religious affiliation. Only 16% of humanity declares having no religious affiliation. But even among these 16%, most of them has some sort of spirituality, some connection with God, gods, spirits, ancestors, wherever. So, but what about the next decades? How this division will change? How the slice of the spy will change? So it's the best predictions that we have based on what is already happening. The predictions to 2060 is that the unaffiliated will decrease even more. So the world will become even more religious or more spiritual throughout the next decades. And regarding some specific beliefs related to spirituality. For example, they believe that people have a soul or that there is life after death. Here are some of the most populous countries around the globe. And then you can see that by large, most of humanity believes that we have a soul and also that there is life after death. And also, different from what many people think, the belief in life after death in many instances has no correlation with the educational level, and even in some countries that it has been shown that the higher the educational level, the higher the belief in life after death. It has been replicated in Russia, in France and in Brazil. So different from what sometimes we are told. It's not true, simply not true, that the belief in life after death, for example, that is a central belief of most spiritual traditions, that this belief is just from people that has no formal education or no scientific knowledge. And it brings us to this next point, the idea, the myth of a perennial and necessary conflict between religion and science. Actually, nowadays, the best scholarship in history of science and history of science and religion declares that there is a myth, that the idea of a perennial conflict between science and religion is a myth. Okay? Just to give some example, this is for someone who'd like to go to know more about this. For me, the best book is this, published by Harvard University Press by Ronald Numbers, one of the top historians of science nowadays. The book calls Galileo Goes to Jail and Other Myths About Science and Religion. It talks about 25 different myths about religion and science. For example, that the church taught in the Middle Age that the earth was flat, or prohibited a human desiccation of corpses, or that Darwin abandoned religion because of his scientific investigations, and so on. Another very good book also is the Cambridge Companion to Science and Religion from Peter Harrison, also one top historian of science and religion, published by Cambridge. Is also wonderful. Just to give an example, contrary to what very often we have been told, the scientific revolution in the 18th and 17th century did not develop based on the rejection of spirituality. On the opposite, this is a very nice book from Rodney Stark, a very important sociologist and historian of science and religion. The book calls For the Glory of God. He puts here 52 of the top scientists, the key scientists for the scientific revolution. And he showed that from these 52 scientists, only one of them was skeptic, what was Edmund Halley. Most of them was religious, but many of the leaders were not only religious, but they were strongly religiously and spiritually motivated to perform science. The idea is that if we understand the creation, we understand and praise the creator. That was the idea of Francis Bacon, Galileo, Kepler, Newton, Robert Boyle, just to give some examples. And but is it possible for science to investigate spirituality, for example? In terms of spirituality of science, we have now literally thousands of empirical studies on spirituality, religion, and health. This is a book, two books published by Oxford University Press. This is a systematic review of 3,300 empirical studies on spirituality and health. And this is a very recent book that we edited, that was published a few months ago, in which where we compile the best of the recent evidence, how it could be applied in clinical practice in our life. So definitely it is possible. In general, these thousands of empirical studies, scientific studies, have shown that the higher the level of religious involvement and of spirituality, the lower the general mortality, lower levels of depression, suicidal behavior and suicidal deaths, substance use abuse, and higher levels of quality of life, well-being, and human flourish. Of course, there are also some negative impacts, but these negative impacts or negative use of religion and spirituality are much less common than the positive use. So it's possible, for example, when people have negative religious coping, when they use religion to deny reality, to a religion that emphasizes very much just on pathological guilty, or in refusing medical psychological treatments, or the idea of just using religion for external purpose, not for the intrinsic values and the intrinsic search for God and the transcendent. But of course, when we are talking about spirituality, we are not denying the other aspects of human beings, for example. We are talking about bio, psycho, social, spiritual approach, integrating all these approaches, the psychological, biological, social, and spiritual aspects of humanity in trying to develop and help us to seek more fulfilling and fulfilling lives. And because of that, for example, the World Psychiatric Association published a few years ago a position statement, exactly declaring and telling psychiatrists around the globe that they should take in consideration the spirituality of their patients, and it could be integrated in a positive way in the clinical practice. And the final point about, I think, one of the most important aspects of the integration of spirituality and science is in the study of mystical, religious, or spiritual experiences. As we said previously, these experiences usually relate some relationship or contact with the transcendent, immaterial, supernatural aspect of reality, God, God's spirit, angels, ancestors. So this experience, for example, through mediumship, other trance experience, near-death experience, end-of-life experiences, out-of-body experiences, all these experiences talk about this contact with some transcendental aspect of reality. However, these experiences can be investigated or try to be interpreted in just a reductionist materialist perspective. The idea that there is only matter in the universe and everything must be explained simply as nothing but these material aspects. So quite often these spiritual experiences have been ignored in scientific environment or try to explain them away as just perceptual problems or cognitive distortion, psychological needs, social-cultural constructions. Of course, this can play a big role in explaining this experience, but we should not be prohibited to consider the possibility that these religious and spiritual experiences can have ontological reality, so that they are actually talking about an actual contact with the transcendental aspect of the universe, that perhaps mind, the consciousness, the spirit is actually beyond the body and being in touch with other consciousness, other minds, other spirits. So it needs to be taken also in consideration in explanation. Because of that, we, with several other researchers who have published almost 10 years ago a manifesto for a post-materialist science. The idea of this manifesto was not to deny science at all, and even not deny the material aspect of the universe. But the idea is not to be restricted just to the material aspect of the universe, because we know that science does not imply physicalism. We propose an expanded naturalism. If you understand naturalism as studying nature in all its aspects and seeking for the rules, for the laws that reign it, so perhaps consciousness may be a fundamental, irreducible aspect of the universe that cannot be just reduced to physical aspects. So we need to take in consideration all the empirical data available and be open to radically different paradigm candidates. And for example, the Spiritist paradigm is one example that, taking in consideration the ontological reality of the spiritual aspect, and it can be explored in scientific way. So for those that are interested in going further in this discussion between science, spirituality, and health, I would recommend the YouTube channel of our research group. It's a bilingual YouTube channel, TV Noopes, that has 300 videos from many leading scientists around the globe on this subject. And here are also our contacts, where we always put new discussions and ideas regarding science and religion and spirituality. Thank you very much. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much, Alexander, for being with us. Wonderful things, lots of things to think about. So thank you again for your time and being with us today. Okay, so, and obviously it's nice to hear the Kiskadi birds in the background there, very unique birds that people can hear in Brazil, also called the Bemchivi. So if you have any questions about Alexander's talk, please send them in the live chat, which will be on the side or below, depending on what device you're watching us on. Right. Let's go now to our next guest, who is Frederico Gouveia, who will be talking about music and arts, connecting to higher dimensions. Frederico is graduated in music business, is a violinist, pianist, an orchestra conductor, as well as a real estate broker. For over 15 years, he has led a group of volunteer musicians who visit nursing homes and hospitals weekly to provide comfort to patients through music and spirituality. He has been an active member of the Spiritist centers in Florida and New York, and recently started a bilingual online channel on Facebook and YouTube called Spirit Reflections. Frederico is in New York, America, and has kindly provided two beautiful pieces of music for SPIRITISMx 2021, one which we played yesterday and one which we will be playing a little bit later today. And he also has a Spotify playlist called Music for the Soul, Classical and Modern Selections. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll hand you over now to Frederico.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Adam, for the introduction and the invitation, and congratulations on another edition of SPIRITISMx. And since we are only in 15-minute window, I'm going to get right to it. I just want to confirm that my screen is being shared properly. Okay, I think it is. Great. So the topic of this this edition is our multi-dimensional journey. And the name of this talk is Connecting to Higher Dimensions, Music and Arts. And as Adam just said, I prepared a Spotify playlist with about 250 selections from the last 400 years of Western classical music, both instrumental and choral music, which provide a great synthesis of some of the most beautiful pieces of music composed by composers everywhere in moments of great inspiration and, shall we say, active mediumship, so that we can really commune with those sounds and let those sounds transform us. And today is just a very brief exposition about how does Spiritism look at music and arts historically, and how has it contributed to our understanding of music, art, and how can we use this in a more spiritual way to forge a greater connection to higher dimensions. So that, as you can see, the name of the topic. But I think before we go attempting to connect to higher dimensions outside, we might want to be able to start looking inside. And that's where I want to offer a couple of quotes here to reflect and get us started. First one being from, here we go, Carl Jung, that says, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." It's quite powerful. No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. And if we can think about it, the roots being immersed on the soil of the earth, we can even make a connection to the idea of humility, since the word humus is precisely that fertile soil that was found, for example, in the banks of the Nile River in ancient Egypt. And thanks to that fertile soil, the existence of that civilization was possible, since as the waters from the Nile River would recede, it would leave behind this incredibly fertile soil where everything could grow and the entire civilization could be nourished from it. So this notion of humility, when we are in humble alignment in our hearts, it's a fertile soil for things to grow, to prosper, and to flourish. So these roots have to reach down to the hell inside of us. And by hell, that means the shadows, the places we don't have the courage to necessarily face it and discover and deal with it. However, it's so necessary that we do. And as this connects to art and expressions of art, we will see that this is the core of our creative potentiality. Since this topic has to do with multi-dimensional journey, this is one of many dimensions of our being, connecting with this creative power, which is a nuclear power plant that we have inside of us, which, by the way, is also connected to our sexual power. And Freud was able to recognize that in his study of psychoanalysis, and he would go to influence artists all over the world to depict and express through art this power that we have inside of us, connected with our unconscious, the subconscious. And related to that, there's Oscar Wilde. Since this is an event being hosted in England, I thought we need to mention Mr. Oscar Wilde, one of the smartest, most brilliant minds of the 20th century. I love this quote about sex. He says, "Everything in the world is about sex, except sex. Sex is about power." Now that goes really to the heart of our connecting to the beauty, the power of art, and expressing feelings, sensations, and emotions through media, whether it's music, whether it's spoken word, poetry, whatever expression. This connects with this creative power. And we've done a great disservice to ourselves when we've separated sex from everything else creative in our world. And our journey as human beings in the process of evolution also includes reconciling that within us, fusing and joining what we look at to be separate and opposites, distinct and apart, which in fact, however, are so connected to each other and depend on one another. So this has everything to do spiritism, since at the time of Kardec, the sciences, the arts, the technologies were advancing in order to show that we all have this power ourselves and don't need to rely on intermediaries or middlemen, middle women to connect to the divine, because the divine is within us. And so this is a great movie that Mel Gibson and Sean Penn star, which talks about the creation of the very first dictionary of the English language, The Professor and the Madman. If you haven't seen this movie, check it out. It's a great flick. And it shows the incredible saga that these men endured in order to compile the very first dictionary in the English language. And the English language being so universal, it had influences and etymologies and sources of words from all over the world. And it was their job to trace the meanings, the history, the transformations that the word went through in order to get to the current usage at the time. And it's really cool because one of the hardest words they were able to trace its origins was exactly the word art, A-R-T. And in the movie, they finally get to the etymology, the root meaning of the word. And what does that mean? The root of it is fire, to incinerate. So when we hear the word arsonist, it is to burn. So it is connected to fire. And it's incredible. Professor Alexandri just mentioned Beethoven in his lecture now. The epitome of Western classical music, according to many philosophers, is his Ninth Symphony, an ode to joy. And he takes the words of Friedrich Schiller, very famous poet in Germany, and begins the ode to joy in the Ninth Symphony by saying, we enter into this heavenly sanctuary drunk with fire. Again, this notion of fire, art. So it's this connection of the ability we have to spark a fire within us, using our creative powers, channeling the energy that we have, which is this nuclear power plant, which is capable to light up a whole city or create a nuclear holocaust, depending on our free will and use of it, and depending on how we direct that energy through a moral compass. It can light up a whole town, And that is what Christ reminded us, to let our light shine so that others can see your good deeds and glorify your Father who is in heaven. This is in the Sermon of the Mountain. So what if we could be able to spark a fire inside of us using the power of our creativity and use the medium of art as a tool, as a vehicle, as an outlet to express our most cherished and sacred feelings and emotions so that others can commune and partake of this divine sacred fire through our experiences. In the Medium's book, Kardec has a very curious passage. It's in chapter 14 of the second part, item 169, when he goes to an opera in Paris. The opera is Oberon by this composer, Carl Maria von Weber. And as you can see in the dates, he had long passed away by the time Kardec went to the opera. And Kardec goes to this opera accompanied by many mediums. And the mediums report to Kardec what they are seeing on stage. So as the opera is unfolding, the mediums report to Kardec that there are many spirits behind the artists on stage, making fun, mimicking, having a good laugh. There are also other spirits in the audience that are close to the audience members, and it's almost like they're trying to get into their business to see what they're doing and try to distract them. And then there's other spirits that look like they are there for higher intention and more noble purposes, until they're able to identify the soprano, the main singer. They see that she has a guardian angel, a spirit guide, who's there watching over her. And at first they think that this guide, is part of the spirits that are more frivolous. So the spirit approaches the medium and says to them, "How dare you confuse me with them? I'm here to guide and protect her. This is my duty." And this happened during the intermission between one act and the other act of the opera. And so the guide turns to them and says, "Now I have to go to her dressing room. She needs me." And at this moment, Kardec decides to invoke the spirit of Carl Maria von Weber, the composer of the opera, to ask him, "Hey, what do you think of this performance? Are you pleased?" And Carl Maria von Weber, as a spirit, responds, "It's not so bad, but they lack inspiration. They are weak. The performers sing, but that is all." Then he says, "Wait, I will try to infuse them with a little of the sacred fire. I will infuse them with a little of the sacred fire." And neither Kardec nor the spirit goes on to explain what is the sacred fire. All they say is that they see the spirit or Carl Maria von Weber going on top of the stage and hovering above the singers. And it seems he emanates something that flows from his spirit that envelops all of them. And at that moment, it is night and day, the difference between the singing intensity and the energy, the way they were singing, night and day. Suddenly they come alive and they sing with much more beauty and expression. So another reference to this sacred fire. What could they be possibly talking about? Right? Other than this incredible powerhouse we have inside of us, this creative expression, creative force that we have. And as I was mentioning, at the time of Kardec and a few decades after him, psychoanalysis, psychology would develop so much, and Freud, Carl Jung would influence the work of so many artists, including the surrealists, who created an entire movement of art wanting to explain the dream states, wanting to get at the communication between the physical and the spirit realm. A lot of artists all over the world at this time, 1920s, 1930s, 1910s, were doing seances in order to evoke the presence of spirits so that they could paint with the help of these spirits, communing with these spirits so that they could use their mediumship to imprint on the art more meaningful expressions of spiritual beauty. And this is an example of a painting by Remedio Varos, which is depicting a moment of conjunction, which is a concept in alchemy, which means the union of two polar opposites, male and female, hot and cold, night and day. When we can unite and fuse these forces within us and have them be operating as one, then we can march ever faster and with more ability to higher and higher realms. And so when we say connecting to higher dimensions, what we are really need to start doing is more and more going inward, going to the source of our creative power, which is more connected to our earthly chakras in the lower parts of our chakras, and allowing that to be channeled through artistic expression, through the consumption of elevated music, poetry, art, have a closer connection to those things so that we can help purify those feelings and expressions. And in doing so, we are able to commune with higher dimensions. We are in a society in the 21st century that's very geared towards practical utility. I will do something and spend my time on something only if it yields a practical purpose and if it's utilitarian in its nature and it's objective. So we need to be able to take a step back as we evolve in humanity and not necessarily spend our time just focused on those activities, but to be able to allow the inner artists that we all are, not just specific group of people that are artistic because they are more talented, but be able to recognize inside of us where our true artistic nature lies, explore that, discover that, give ourselves the time every day to work with our inner artists and express it, whether it's through singing, through writing poems, through writing stories, through painting, playing an instrument, whatever means we want to use, but not be so much worried about the result, the byproduct. When we look at a performance of orchestra musicians in a famous concert hall, we're looking at a product. We're looking at an end result. That's not what I'm proposing. I'm proposing that we go through a process, and the process itself is important to allow us to discover ourselves more through the use of art, the connecting of this sparking of this fire, as the word truly means, art, fire, to incinerate, to burn. And with this, be able to connect to higher dimensions as we're going through the process itself. And I will stay here for the roundtable and would love to have your questions and answers. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Frederico, for being with us once more. So let me bring up Frederico's card, because I forgot to show that before. So Frederico will be with us for the round table. If you have any questions for him, please make sure you send them via the live chat. And of course, any questions for about Alexander's talk as well. There we go. I'm sorry for forgetting to show the card beforehand. Right. So we're halfway through the talks. So we need to go now just to have one last look at, well, sorry, not last look, another look at the Kardec Group High Five campaign. This is a campaign that fundraising campaign we started last year, which many of you should be aware of. But for those of you who are new to knowing about Kardec Group, here's some information about it. So this campaign has been set up to help two groups in Brazil. Grupo Espírita Sheila in Salvador, run by Florencio Anton, and Instituto Multidimensional in Curitiba, run by Daniel Rossi, are non-profit organizations which support their local poor communities in Brazil. Both of these groups work to provide various activities, educational care, social care, things such as food bundles, which we know are really important, baby boxes, housing, so many things, some kinds of support which these people can't normally get from anywhere else. And during this pandemic, we know that the needs have been increasingly high and the number of donations have been low and the general resources have been much lower than normal. So these guys work really hard to support their respective communities, and we think it's only right that we try to help them if we can. So here at Kardec Group, we just want a little bit of support. So if you can spare 20, 10, or even £5, so we're talking about the price of a large, a medium, or even a personal pizza. That's how you can equate it. Or maybe tea and cake or coffee and cake for 3, 2, or just one person. That's all we're talking about. We're not talking about a fortune, just a small amount. That's all it takes, because if everyone were to donate a small amount each month, then these two groups will have everything they need to make sure that children are off the streets in safe activities, that families can put food on their plate, and that people can have a secure home to live in. So please come and help us at the High Five campaign. For more information about this, to see how to donate through us or to donate directly to them if you have an account in Brazil, you can go to our website, which is www.kardec.org.uk/high5, the address that is there on the screen for you. So it's High Five, HIGHFIVE. 100% of the donations received for this campaign will go only to these two groups. Thank you. So let's go and have a quick hello to all the people who are with us now. Let me just bring everything up here. So let's say hello to Elsa Rossi, Jean Carlos, Emmanuel, Georgia, Michelle, Paula, Umberto's with us again, Gerald, Zoraide, Erica, Antonio Carlos, Joe, Lindalva, and Tammy. Thank you so much for being with us today. It means a lot that we have so many people with us for this event. Okay, we're going to go now to our third talk already. Gosh, it's flying by so quickly. So we're going to go to the third talk now, which is with, let me make sure I bring it up correctly this time. There we go. Yeah, I remembered. Okay, we're going to our third talk now, which is with Pekka Kaarakainen from Hollola in Finland, who will be talking about the future we are building now. Pekka is a mechanical engineer who spent several years in Brazil because of his work. It is in Brazil that he had contact with Spiritism. Since then, Pekka has been dedicated in getting Spiritism known and understood in Finland by coordinating study groups, giving public lectures, organizing events, writing articles, and translating books into Finnish. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll pass you now to Pekka.
Good afternoon for everybody, and thank you for organizer to having this possibility to talk about this interesting subject, that the future what we are building now, and actually where are we going. And I go directly to the topic. So I make some questions. Maybe there is some questions which are quite interesting for some of us. So, do you have some friends or relatives who have been feeling insecurity or hopeless when they think about the future? How about, have you found right words and arguments to lift them up? And do you think that what is coming is some kind of chaos? Or is there actually coming something, a new order? So these are questions which has been or have been in my mind, and I hope that we can find some lights for them during the following moments. So many people are nowadays, they are feeling insecurity, and for some of them there is natural, there is health reasons. Some of us, we are feeling insecurity because of our incomes are unstable. Sometimes we are having problems with work, with several challenges that we are facing nowadays. And something what is especially, let's say, creating insecurity is that nowadays, especially for young people, there is requested a lot of, let's say, popularity, success in social media, and everybody should look nice and beautiful. So these are creating quite big, let's say, issues with young people. And of course, we know that what is the situation with environmental issues. And that's something that doesn't look very promising nowadays. So there is actually reasons why many of us, we are not feeling so well. And it has been affecting for many people. And it's the situation what we are having, but it's the situation what can be helped. So the big problem what we have in our society is the materialism. And I mean with materialism the belief that consciousness is in our brain operation. So that since our brain operation stops, so it means that everything stopped for human being. There is nothing else with that. And nowadays we know, based on reincarnation studies and also for near-death experience studies, that that's not true. It's simply belief which has been created based on materialistic beliefs. But the danger of this belief is that it's taking purpose from life. So if we don't get in our mind anything else in future than death, and everything stops after that, then we are in very complicated situation. So nowadays it's very common also this lack of understanding regarding life and the purpose of the challenges what we have to face. And also the unknown after the death, it's also creating fears. So that's the most of the reasons of the insecurity what I can, let's say, mention. Of course, there is others, but these are, let's say, the principal for many persons. So now, to go over this situation, we should have better understanding regarding life and universal laws. And there is law of evolution, and it is happening in individual level. And it happens actually through reincarnation process. So it's good to understand that we are pre-existing souls, pre-existing spirits. There is continuity of consciousness or continuity of life after death. And everybody has a soul or spirit which has been developing and continues to develop. And there is several incarnations and level of development what we have passed. And another driving force in our development is law of cause of effect. Everybody receives the effects of their own acts. And if you can see this small kid here, which is touching this toy, it's giving impulse, and this impulse come back. And the same is happening with us. We are giving impulse to life, and it comes back. And it depends on us what kind of impulses we are giving, then we can get these impulses back. And in our inner development, we are having two kinds of development. One of these developments is intelligence. We learn new things. We increase our, let's say, intellectual capabilities. But also we are increasing our moral capabilities, our moral development. And it means the understanding the right and wrong, make good deeds and less to do the bad deeds. And that's something what is actually important for our future happiness. So this was in individual level. This is something what concerns to you and me and for everybody who are living here. But then we can go have a look for in collective level. And in collective level, we can see that there is also law of evolution. And this law of evolution, it concerns actually whole planet. So planet is also having evolution. It's having evolution as a moral basis, and it's related on its inhabitants. So as soon when inhabitants of this planet get morally evolved, then we can consider that this planet gets more evolved, because every single change, it reflects to the environment. So every good impact or good impulse in moral point of view, it gives resonance outside, and then it will continue. So nowadays we are living in that kind of situation in this planet, that we are coming from one evolutionary level to the another level, next level. And it is like, let's say, reform in house. So this planet where we are living now, it was before, it was even worse, we can say. And now we are in this reform phase, which is here in like progress. And during this reform phase, it's a quite complicated situation. There is different kind of obstacles what we have to live with. But after that, we will get very nice, beautiful house where we can, let's say, continue our life better. So we are in this middle phase now, and it's understandable that when we are going to this reform, we have some inconvenience with that. So actual period, what we are now today, if we think about in collective point of view, and this, let's say, last 2 centuries, there is huge intellectual and technological development. Our, in collective level, human intelligence and technological level has been increasing. It's huge development. But unfortunately, the same has not happened with the moral development. So we understand that nowadays, unfortunately, our planet, we are using a lot of money, which is not helping too much actually. And our values, they are almost related to money and successful life, which is practically calculated to level of money and popularity. And this is something what's very easy for us. So if we think about how the income is variating, so if I remember correctly, close to the 10% they are, let's say, or 20% of the population, they are consuming 80% of the whole population. Let's say all income is coming for them. And it's leaving so many people in very bad position. And we are using a lot of, let's say, consuming different kind of things which are created in many cases with child work. So that's the way how we are living. And another thing is the education of our kids. Because the education of the kids, it's also making the difference what is the future. Because if we understand the point of reincarnation point of view, sometimes these kids, they may be our grandfather or something like that, or they will teach our grandfather. So we have to think about our kids, our future with them. And unfortunately, many times we are not paying enough attention with our kids. So there is some examples, but everybody can see and we can pay attention with that. So also what is typical for actual period where we are is that most of us, we are driven by instincts. and there is survival instinct, there is instinct of species preservation, and they are not actually they are not promoting high values, because if we get more money, it's egoism, it's essentialism, and these are actually the things which doesn't rise us too much in a moral way. So actually, what are values, what are desirable today? That's something what we have to understand. What means that people are successful? Is it money? Is it status? Is it popularity? Or is it something what is really inside of us? That's something what really needs to be, let's say, taught. So what's happening now is that our world, we are having situation that when we die, so that is some of us, based on the way how we have been living and acting, we will continue in this planet. We will kind of have the next life in here. But these which are not developing as we should, they will have the next incarnation in some another level of world. And that's something what will happen. And it's based of the syntony. If we are not attuned with higher level of development, we are going out from that. So how will I survive this? Which kind of world I will incarnate next time? And how about my children, my friend, my spouse and relatives? These are questions which are rising up quite often. And somebody asked that, okay, am I really right place? And I can tell you that yes, this life offers to you the possibility to reach a lot of good deeds. And you are invited to participate in this work. And it is privilege to be here and have the possibility to see this period with incarnated eyes. So our children, our families, our friends, they need positive examples, this positive impulse, and this will help them during this period, as well we. So it's worthwhile to search for life, greater meaning and understanding beyond our earthly life. I'm sure that if people start to look, you can find it. And find your way to keep yourself spiritually well attuned. Nobody can't recommend enough prayer. Pray and develop prayer, because it's not something what you can go to sleep and you will almost fall asleep. You can do and concentrate and put your heart on that. And what more you can do with your heart, that more you can see the effect. Elevating books and audiobooks, they are so easy. Audiobooks, they are very nice. You can hear, you can listen. Whenever you can do traveling to go to work, going back to work, you can do it. And they can elevate you. And nowadays, this gospel is more valid now than ever. It's the moral content of this book. It's amazing. If you start to look for that with new eyes, you will find huge things there. Of course, elevating music, that's something what helps us also. But something what I have seen that it's the important. Avoid non-elevating topics. We are sometimes taking our time using the internet, social media, with the things which you can easily see. Are they making me up or are they putting me down? And you can feel yourself, what you can feel inside. So, okay, this is something what I don't want anymore. I want to do something else. Okay, so when we have attuned with more moral things and we have better feelings inside, there is not enough that we have good feeling and good moral thoughts in mind. We have to do something. So there is something charity, something volunteer work, what you can do, and it makes you better. It's make you feel better because every good deed make you feel good. So constant work and acts with love, benevolence, and forgiveness. These are for sure which will make your life better. So let's build a beautiful future together, and then we can see what will come together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pekka, for that really wonderful talk. It's I think, again, everything today is flowing so well together, and the need of action, the need of reflection. There's a lot that we've got to be talking about in our round table, I think, and we've got lots of questions coming through. So if you have any questions for Pekka, for Frederico, Alessandra, about any of their talks, please send them via the live chat. And honestly, our question list is building up quite quickly. So we are going to go now for... Where are we going now? Yes, we're going to the last talk of this block. So, yes, we are... That's the one. We are going now to have a talk with Suzana Simões, who will be talking about charity as a means for self-discovery. Suzana is from Miami in America, where she is a doctor of physical therapy and works as a director of rehabilitation for the program of all-inclusive care for the elderly in Miami. She is also one of the founders of the Conscious Living Spiritist Group in Miami and is also a member of the Spiritist Conversations podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I hand you over now to Suzana.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today in this attempt to understand our multidimension journey. And one of the important aspects of this journey is the aspect of self-knowledge. In question 919 of the Spirit's book, Allan Kardec asked the good spirit, what is the most effective means for improvement? And the spirit's answer to Kardec was, know thyself. It is self-knowledge. So self-knowledge is the most effective means for improvement. But the journey of self-knowledge, the journey of going inside, is quite often an arduous one. And I'm going to bring back the quote that Fred used in the very beginning of his talk by Jung when he says, no tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. I love it. And it goes hand to hand with the idea that I'm trying to bring, that this journey inside to get to know oneself, it is quite arduous. And it is so because most often for us in our level of development, the trip has as a pilot our very dysfunctional ego. And the ego takes the front seat as we drive within as a very hard judge, a judge that makes the travel that feels quite often inadequate, full of guilt, and full of shame. So this is why it's so important that we add the component of charity to this journey of self-discovery and the work of self-knowledge that is so vital for our growth and our enlightenment. So let me take a step back for a second, just to touch a little bit about the idea of love. When I think of life, I think of love. From its beginning to its end, everything in life speaks about love. So if we think about our Creator is infinite intelligence and infinite love. So we are created from God's love. Our essence is the image and the likeness of the Creator, and therefore we can say that, relatively speaking, we two are intelligence and love. In addition to that, our final destination is for us to be able to manifest the love that is latent in us today in its unconditional way. In the entire journey from the moment we were created to our final destination is about learning to love. So Spiritism also tells us that without charity, there is no salvation. And in Spiritism, we understand the word charity as love in action. So without this love in action, there is no way we can save, meaning there is no way we can find peace, we can find harmony and happiness within ourselves. In question 866 of the Spirit's book that talks about charity, the Spirits remind us that charity embraces all relationships and that charity also has the power of diminishing the distance between two persons. So when we think about relationships, we go back to the maximum that we have for us, which is to love God above all and our neighbor as ourselves. So improving our relationships starts with us. It is quite important that we learn to love ourselves, because the way we treat ourselves, the way we deal with ourselves reflects in the way that we're going to deal with our brothers and sisters. And the more we can be loving with our own selves, the more we'll be able to see and to love our neighbors. And through this connection, we are also connecting to the Creator through its creators. So the beginning of this journey, it starts with oneself. And it is through this journey of self-knowledge and self-love that we will transform this world and make this world a better place. It starts by loving ourselves, and this will teach us or allow us or change the nature of our relationships with our brothers and sisters, and will help us to establish a much more fraternal and embracing world for ourselves and for the future generations. So self-love makes this whole journey inwards much smoother, because as it is also stated by the Spirits in question 866, charity means benevolence, indulgence, forgiveness. I would add, not to really add, but I like the word compassion. So as we travel inwards, what is the word? I'm missing the word. With the tools of self-love, then what we're doing is we are taking this dysfunctional ego and healing it, or we are asking the ego to take the place of co-pilot, which really is where the ego should be seated, and allow the self, allow the divine to actually take charge of this inner journey. The question is, how can we accomplish this? How can this be done? Because as I say it, as I'm sharing my thoughts with you, I always think this is so beautiful, such a beautiful idea. It is so philosophical. But when it comes down to our day-to-day, what does it look like and where do we start? So when we think about the journey within towards self-knowledge, there are some elements that are very important and that will help us to get there in this more loving way. First of all, we need to be courageous. Why courage? Because it is a road where we will pretty much, using the words of Brené Brown that I love very much, we will place ourselves in the middle of the arena. In other words, we will seek to see ourselves as we truly are. in our humanity, in our smallness. And therefore, it calls for courage, the courage to see, the courage to be, without defenses, without armor, without disguises. It also calls for an ability to see. We need to be prepared to see. We need to set our minds and our deep intent to see, no longer the mode as we have been focusing so much. It's not about looking outwards. It's not about identifying the limitations and darkness of others, but it is truly about identifying the speck in our own eyes. So it requires a mindset and intent that can set us up to see, to be able to truly observe inwards. And then it calls for the ability to bear. Once we see, it is very important and crucial that we don't try to run away from what we see, whether it is towards work, whether it is towards devoting ourselves to Spiritist movement and lectures and charity outwards in such a way that gives us no time to be with ourselves, whether it's to food, to drugs, all of those things help us to escape from the feelings that are often uncomfortable and not necessarily a place where we want to be, but that is so key for us to be able to bear. And bearing the feelings take us to another important place, that is the place of acceptance. Now, when I talk about acceptance, acceptance is a key component for transformation. And I'm not talking about acceptance that is a shallow statement when I say, for instance, oh yes, I'm a proud person. I'm talking about acceptance that is an inner movement. It is a state of awareness that actually allows for the being to be dislodged and for a shift to take place with the ego within. So for us to be able to truly accept, and this is a very difficult concept, and if you're interested in learning more about it, we do have a full 1-hour lecture on this topic available. But acceptance, for us to be able to truly accept our humanity, which is a very, and perhaps the most loving thing we can do for ourselves, there are 3 important components that need to be in place. One of them is dignity. We need to feel that although we are incredibly incomplete at this time, incredibly small, we can bear these feelings because we never lose sight of the divine in us. The parable of the workers of the last hour is one that speaks about our value and how God sees each one of us. Whether you enter in the vineyard in the first hour or the last hour, no matter how many hours you have been working at the Father's vineyard, no matter how good of a worker or how much resources you have at any given moment, Jesus teaches us that in the eyes of God, we all have the same value. We all worth 1 denarius. There's no difference. So it doesn't matter how inferior you may feel. It doesn't matter how many errors you commit. God looks at you and sees in you its beloved child. So when we are in touch with this feeling, it is much easier for us to take this journey inwards without the harsh feelings that we talk about of judgment that brings so much shame and so much guilt. But it's also important that we respect ourselves as we should respect others. And what is respect if not love with a sense of worth? When I say that I respect someone, and I really mean it, because we say that a lot, but we don't actually mean it. Because when I respect someone, no matter how different that person thinks of me, I speak with that person and I see that person for who he or she is, for the divine being that that person is. So respect brings the idea that the person is seen, that the person belongs, and that the person is valued. the same feeling I must have towards myself. And finally, last but certainly not least, humility. It is important that we understand that our egos have placed us in the top of a podium, a place where we do not belong. So, as we enter into this journey, we have to be prepared and also in a mindset to step down from the top of the podium to the second place, to the third place, and back to the ground where we truly belong. Many times, this descent from the podium is interpreted by us as humiliation, as being put down. But in reality, it is just the process of self love that allows us to recognize where we truly belong. And I will close by saying it is this movement of self knowledge and self love that will change the nature of our relationships. We have been relating to one another in a vertical way, always looking down upon others to replace ourselves, and to feel in a higher place. As we enter ourselves and get in touch with our humanity without shame and without guilt, we position ourselves in the right place without ever forgetting how divine we are, and we change the nature of our relationships from vertical to horizontal. And it is precisely this shifting paradigm of self knowledge with self love that will bring us a better world. Because what is missing in the world today is not lack of intelligence, as it has been said, but it is lack of love. God bless you all, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Suzana, for that wonderful talk. We'll come back to you a bit later for the round table. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions for Suzana, for Frederico, for Pekka, or Alessandro about their talks, please send them now in the comments. And we do have a few questions, but I think we can manage a few more. And don't forget to say hello. Let us know where you're watching from, because we still have quite a few people watching with us who haven't said hello yet. Right. It is now time, ladies and gentlemen, for another prize draw. Yes. So all those people who signed up in advance of the event and selected to be entered for the prize draw have put their names forward to win a bundle of Spiritist books. So if your name is selected, please let us know in the comments that you are watching live with us. If you don't let us know, then we will choose another name in a moment. So let us bring up the little magic spinning wheel. There we go. Are we ready? Drum roll, please. Let's spin the wheel and see who's going to win the third bundle of Spiritist books. And the winner is Marge Christina Marcondes. So, if you are watching with us live, please let us know via the live chat, or please let us know somehow that you're actually watching live with us. So, please contact us as soon as you can, just to confirm that you're watching live with us. We'll leave that name up just for another moment. Okay, so Marge, if you're watching live with us, please let us know. Okie dokie. So we are going to go now. While we wait, we're going to have a little musical interlude. And as I mentioned before, our good friend Frederico, who's with us, has provided two pieces that we've been sharing through the event. And the piece we're going to be playing now is called The Hudson, composed by Ola Gjello, who is a Norwegian composer and pianist currently living in America. Now, this piece is performed by Frederico on violin and Yara Gouveia on piano. So please sit back, relax, while we listen to this wonderful piece of music called The Hudson. How absolutely captivating that was. Thank you, Frederico, for that wonderful, wonderful piece of music. Okay, we have not heard from Marge, so we're going to bring up the little spinner again. So, technical team, if you press the blue button on the spinner, click the blue button, there we go. Now we can bring it back in. And here we go again. Let's try once more to find a winner for a bundle of Spiritist books. Elzo Cavalcanti, if you're watching us live, Elzo Cavalcanti, and I do hope you are, then please let us know via the chat and we will try to contact you to make sure that you are indeed a winner of a bundle of Spiritist books. Elzo Cavalcanti, if you're watching, please let us know. Okay, so while we wait for Elzo to confirm, we will go now to, I've just lost my controller, there we go. We're going to now go to talk again about this important campaign that Kardec Group is supporting. It's an official campaign by the Brazilian Spiritist Medical Association, by Mansão do Caminho, by Centro Espírita Caminho da Redenção, and Editora Leal. This is the Joana de Anjos translation project. I will bring up now a short message from Gelson Luiz Roberto, who is coordinator of the Center for Spiritism and Psychology of the Brazilian Spiritist Medical Association, to explain a little bit about it. My friends, it's with great joy that we announce at this moment a joint effort of the whole Spiritist movement in favor of the translation of the works of the psychological series of Joana de Angelis into English. This is a campaign that we, from the Center for Psychology and Spiritism of AMI Brazil, are conducting so that the benefactor's work may be translated by native English speakers and have the depth and seriousness it needs, as it is extremely complex material which requires a lot of care to be translated. We count on everyone for this campaign so that not only the benefactor's work, but other books related to the psychological series can reach as many people outside of Brazil as possible. We count on everyone. A big hug, and may the divine light bless us in this project. Okay, thank you, Gelson, for recording that message to explain it. So yes, this is the Joana de Anjos translation project, which all that's being asked for is for people to help and donate towards the new English editions of the psychological series by Joana de Angelis, as well as other books related to the series, to help bring the words of the benefactor to thousands of people around the world. Now, it's quite easy to make a donation if you can. We have these posters available in English and Portuguese. And all you need to do is go to the following website, www.kardec.org.uk/Joanna, Joanna. And on that page, you'll find both the posters in English and Portuguese, as well as all the PayPal buttons that you need for donating in British pounds, Brazilian reais, US dollar, or even euro. We can accept any of those currencies. Again, this is an official campaign by AMI Brazil, Mansão do Caminho, Centro Espírita Caminho da Redenção, and Editora Leal. Kardec Group is supporting this campaign, and we would love it if you can donate any amount that you can. And again, 100% of donations for this campaign itself will go directly to the project. Excuse me. So just to repeat again, website is there on the screen, www.kardec.org.uk/Joanna. Thank you. Well, we've now had all the talks. We've spun the wheel twice for the prize draw. We've not had any reply from Marge or Elzo, so I think we're going to have to go once more. So, backstage, click on OK, and let's spin again. Right, third time lucky. Let's see. Please be with us today, Alini Rohoff. Alini Rohoff, if you are watching live with us, are you watching live with us? We're going to give you just a few seconds, actually. Alini Rohoff, if you're watching live with us. We'll wait just a moment more. Alini Rohoff, if you're watching live with us, you have potentially won a bundle of Spiritist books. I do not think that Alini is with us. Shall we roll once more? Production. So last time that we're going to spin this today, well, for this block. No, we know that Elzo isn't watching. So let's try another time. Carlos Baruki, if you are watching with us, please let us know. Please just send any comment in the chat, because you have potentially won a bundle of Spiritist books. Okay, I think we're going to move on now. If we have no reply, then we might spin the wheel again later. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for our round table. So, let's welcome back our guests. Let's welcome back Frederico Gouveia, Suzana Simões, Pekka Kaarakainen, and also Umberto Schubert, as unfortunately Alexander is not able to take part in the round table right now. So again, thank you everyone for being with us, for the wonderful talks that you provided, for all these great reflections that you gave as well. And we do have quite a few questions here. Let's see, where should we go first? Frederico, big names of art or music can always be considered highly evolved spirits. Why is that?
That's not necessarily true, because there's intellectual development, and so I can be a great technician in a particular art form, but if I didn't evolve morally with my feelings alongside the technical ability, then I'll just be a great artist on the technical side and not necessarily highly evolved in the sense that whatever I'm producing to the world is actually making people feel better. You know what I mean? So, but having said that, I would say that the majority of great artists and music and composers who have become immortalized through their work it points in the direction that they are more evolved, but it's definitely not a absolute sign that they are indeed more evolved. It's like saying every vegetarian person is a more evolved spirit. No, but every highly evolved spirit would most likely become a vegetarian or be a vegetarian. So it's like this interchange I think we should consider. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, I think that's quite a good answer, actually. Anyone else want to provide any additional input to that? No? Well, I think you're absolutely right. Just because of having that technical skill doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be highly evolved. So let's go to another question now, and this one is for Pekka. Pekka, the new generation has a lot of access to information due to the technology we have, and we become so occupied with that we forget to socialize. Can this be a challenge for our individual spiritual evolution?
That's a good question, and I can tell you that it needs education from parents, and it needs example from parents. So I have seen, and I think we all have seen, and I have seen that in myself, we are sometimes tired. we have been passing consuming day. We are maybe stressed, and we want to have a little bit relief, be without thinking nothing. And it's so easy to take this Facebook or something and let time go around. And I have noticed from myself that it's very complicated to stop somewhere, from the bus stop or car or wherever, without being connected to something. It's sometimes very complicated to be somewhere and without doing nothing, and let's say listen yourself. And I noticed that from myself, and I systematically started to do something with that. And I noted that it was happening not only with me, it was happening also for some other people in my family. So first of all, I started to recognize that from myself. And then we were discussing about that, and we were starting to do something. So I think it's good to pay attention for that. I think but it's the question of the selection. So there is a lot of very important and interesting and elevating things available for everyone, for us. And of course, there is also a lot of this kind of things which are putting us down in moral point of view. So we have to take care, especially with younger, let's say, children. So we have to protect them also. And there is nowadays some kind of tools for that, virtual, how to say, parenting, which is helping for us. But I think that already to making this question will open the person who think about the future, who think about the well-being for our kids, or their future. It's already start to open to responses. So I don't think that I will be able to recognize and let's say identify the correct things. But when we start to think about that, and we will start to think that what will elevate us, what will not. If I go to the play with kids or walk in the nature or take a book and read and discuss about that, how much we are taking time for that. And if we will make that kind of self-balance, then we will be able to recognize that what would be the right direction to go. But the first of all, I would say that the question was so nice and so well, and it may be very, let's say, good starting point to really to make good movement. And that's my limited comment for that.
No, thank you. Any other reflections from anyone? Please jump in at any time. And in fact, does anyone have any questions for each other about their talks? No, not at the moment. Okay, that's not a problem, because we still have quite a few submitted by our wonderful audience today. So, no, thank you, Pekka. And exactly, we have to find those enlightening things, find that way, especially to educate children. And I think this past year and a half now, 18 months, 19 months of COVID, many people have perhaps forgotten how to socialize a little bit, but perhaps we can explore that a little bit later. Suzana, why is it so difficult, and why does it take so long to improve ourselves, even knowing and accepting our behaviors and attitudes towards someone or situation? What can we do to speed up our self-improvement? Is it just a case of loving ourselves?
I think what you can do to speed up the process is not to be anxious about it. And to understand that if you read the Spirit's book, you will see the evolution is indeed a very slow process. When we want to change an idea of a paradigm in our society, it takes time, it takes generations in order for that change to be deeply rooted and actually real, truly integrated into the society. We are very frail beings. As we know, we are more frail than evil. And we are very much still in the young years of our evolution, if you will. The evolution process is slow. I remember, it comes to mind, I one time had the opportunity to receive a message from, I was struggling with my own evolution, and I had the opportunity, as I was saying, to receive a message from a spirit benefactor. And he said to me very kindly, my dear daughter, you continue to move forward, turtle steps. But the good thing is that we are all moving forward, and that is just the pace. It takes a long time for us to change anything inside us. I like to say that the only miracle that Spiritism truly believes is the miracle of self-transformation. In order for us to transform ourselves, it takes a long time. It takes many times, and this is what sometimes we fail to understand. It is a long process that is done through trials and errors, and a lot of times it takes many falls, it takes many mistakes for us to gather enough inner momentum to actually be able to transform. Because transformation is not about knowing intellectually things. If it was about that, probably all of us here, including the ones who are listening to us, would be in a better place. Why aren't we? Because the fact that we know all the things that we know, unfortunately for us, does not make us a better individual. It makes us only instructed individuals. And there's another question in the Spirit's book that talks precisely about that. We have like to think that we are civilized beings, but we have only passed the first phase of civilization, which is the acquiring of intellectual understanding. We have yet a lot of work to be done. We're only going to be considered civilized when selfishness and pride are no longer part of our society. So, as we can see, it's important that we integrate this understanding into our minds. We're coming from a very ignorant place of meaning not knowing, in a place of a lot of distance from God. And that generates a lot of frailty. So, yes, we have progressed intellectually very quickly, but there's a lot of healing to be done. A lot of times we want to do better, but we still cannot do better because we don't know what is within ourselves that we need to address, that needs to be healed in order for the intellectual knowledge to be translated into virtues. So it is a slow process. And the more we can accept that that is the nature of our evolution, the more peace we will have. That's part of self-love. It's to understand that actually God wanted for it to be this way. If God wanted for us to be created perfectly and finished, God would have done that. But that was not part of God's plan. God wants us to build us ourselves with time, little by little, through our experiences. Our egos would like to argue with God and say that God made a mistake. Why go through all this pain and suffering? But the reality is that if we accept God's will, God wants us to be this way. So part of self-love is actually integrating those concepts into our minds and understanding that it is indeed a very slow process. But as we move forward through our trials and errors, through our many failures, once we learn it, that's ours to take, ours forever, will never be lost again.
Thank you. I've got nothing else I can say regarding that. Okay, so let's go to the next question. I'm going to join a few questions here. And this was originally for Frederico, but actually could be for Umberto because it links well to the Leon Denis works as well. Is it only classical music or classical arts that can connect us to higher dimensions? Are other forms bad for us? And is that higher dimension connectivity, spirituality, is that limited only to humans?
I'm sorry, was it for me or for Fred?
For both of you, or anyone who wants to answer.
Yeah, I think Fred could start.
Definitely, every single genre there's good in it. The thing is, many genres have become enslaved to the commercial formula of selling as many albums as possible. So they have had to restrict the way their music is structured in 2 or 3 minutes. And a lot of the motivation behind the compositions, the arrangements, the singings were geared for commercial purposes. And so the baser instincts, animating the baser emotions, sensations, a lot of the genres have sort of been hijacked by the machine of industry and commerce. But the genres themselves are neutral and beautiful, and you are able to find incredibly enlightening pieces of music in every genre. What I think sets classical music, opera, apart is that they don't have that commercial concern or commercial agenda. So the composer has a much broader canvas onto which they can express their feelings through music. If it's 30 minutes long, an hour long, 3 hours long, it doesn't matter. If they're telling a story, they're inviting the listener to go on a much deeper journey. The aim is not to sell albums and make money necessarily. So I think that's what makes it so unique. But there's nothing inherently purer or better to classical music. It's just this dichotomy of the being hijacked, I believe, to commercial, money-making agendas.
Well, my presence here is very questionable, for I cannot answer in the name of Alexander. I could possibly answer in the name of the research team to which I also belong. But more importantly, I wanted to be with these people here. That's why I accepted to come. I would only add to Fred that there is more complex music, and we should make the effort to learn how to taste it adequately. But obviously, art is a tool or a means to an end, and more important than the tool in itself, or more important than worshiping the tool, is to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
Well said.
Absolutely. And obviously art and music, they go hand in hand completely. And I'm just trying to find the next question I was going to say regarding that. And regarding that, Frederico, you mentioned about sex in your talk about arts. So what is the connection between sexual energy and this creativeness?
I think they're incredibly intertwined, Adam. The majority of songs are about heartbreak, are about recovering from a lost love, a disappointment from a romantic interaction. And the creator, the composer, the songwriter behind that is healing himself or herself by creating a piece of music that expresses the longing, the pain, the thirst for that is no longer possible. And in my school, when I went to music school, one of the courses we took was on songwriting. And the professor, who was in the recording industry back when the record industry was before Napster, had a lot more power. He said the secret to a successful pop song is to tell a sad story in a happy way, because then everyone can identify with it. They can empathize because everyone feels sadness and pain and disappointment. But if you're able to tell that and spin it in a happy way, then we feel uplifted and we want to actually consume it for therapeutic purposes. Oh, I need a little pick me up, so I'll listen to that song, and when we hear the word sex, we make so many associations to our genitalia, but sex is much more than that. It's the creative force where we are exchanging sexual energies right now when we're interacting with enthusiasm and speaking from a place of passion, it doesn't mean intercourse. So I think that's why words are so limiting. When we look at the word sex, we immediately think only that, but it's part of a much greater spectrum, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for that. Right, next question then. Oh, and we were asked to provide the references that Alexander mentioned and Frederico. So Frederico, you mentioned it was the book, the film, The Professor and the Madman.
Yep.
And the books that Alexander mentioned were Galileo Goes to Jail, Handbook of Religion and Health, and Spirituality and Mental Health Across Cultures. And of course, if you want to watch things again, you can always rewind and you can watch the whole event again live if you want. So the whole live event again if you want to, and the individual talks will be edited and saved out on YouTube later. Pekka, the person who asks this says, I am, not myself, the person who asked it has said that they are an ordinary person with no clarity if they have a mission. How can they contribute? How can we contribute for the future that we are building if we don't understand our mission?
Mission. We all have mission. I'm father. I have mission. I'm son. I have father and I have mother. I have mission. It depends on the concept what you give to the word mission. But I believe, and I have understood when I'm reading the books of Spirit's book, there is chapter 2, which is incarnation of spirits. There is purpose of the incarnation. It's the first part of the chapter 2 of Spirit's book. Then we have chapter 6 is spirit life. And there is one part of this chapter is the choice of the trials. And if we look this part of the Spirit's book, then we start to get some kind of understanding why we are here and why we are in the situation and circumstances where we are now. So we understand that we are nowadays incarnated over 6 billion incarnated here. So we are having different kind of missions. We are living in different kind of environmental conditions. Here in Finland, we are having negative temperature in Celsius. Maybe in Brazil, the situation is different. So we have to understand that we have all our different kind of missions, but we can look around of us and we can look to the person who are closest to us. Often people are getting understanding about the high missions and let's say elevating the humanity to the next level. So typically they are not knowing about that. The people start to do things with big heart and big force and big let's say faith, trying to help people. And then something big start to happen. We have examples regarding that. So I don't think that I have been thinking somebody has been telling to me that my mission is this, and another people has been saying that it's my mission is that. And I have been quite careful with these kind of things, but I have been paying attention that I have been looking to situation what I have been living. I have been looking the kids which are with me. I have been looking my father who has been with me. I have been looking my friends, my let's say fellows in the work, and also to general situation. So I have been thinking that there is something what can be useful, and there is some time what I can dedicate from myself and trying to move things better. And of course, when I start to do that, then I have to start to trying to elevate myself and trying to find some good information and start to do things different way before in the past. So I try to do things to something better way. So I think it's understandable, and you forgive me if I can't say that what is the mission, but I think that we can look where are we. I think that we can look to people which we can reach. We can have a look for the information sources which are available. As I recommended these chapters in the Spirit's book, chapter 6, which is the spirit life, and chapter 2 is the incarnation of spirits. So if you read this, I'm sure that you will find a lot of content which will give you, let's say, brighter idea, much brighter idea than I could explain. Even I would take 1 hour and a half. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think part of that thing of trying to understand ourselves and what we're doing is perhaps the need of loving and forgiving ourselves so that we can have that clear mind. So, Suzana, how can we practice this act of loving and forgiving ourselves?
It's a practice. Let's start with that, right? We are learning to forgive and to love ourselves. So there is no formula. Part of the problem in our lives is that we wish there was a pill for everything that could quickly solve all our problems or shortcuts, but there isn't. So love and forgiveness is like everything else, is a process that starts with your intent. Everything starts with the intent. So you have to set up your mind and bring that intent into your everyday life and situation. It helps if you understand that forgiveness is never about the other person, it's about yourself. Forgiveness is a process of self-healing. The moment that you are hurt by someone else, all that means is that that person was able to touch a wound or area of vulnerability that you have within yourself. And so it is always an invitation for you to attend to yourself, to take care of yourself. If you are able to heal that wound, then that offense, it gets unloaded. Let's put it this way. It changes its meaning. So you can have two people being offended in the same way, and their response to that offense will be different, because it's, again, not about the offense itself. It's about how it's being received, by whom, and where you are internally when you listen to something. So I'll share briefly a personal experience, because I think a lot of times when we talk a little bit about day-to-day experiences, it's easier for people to relate to. So one of the biggest challenge that I had in my life in my early 20s was actually to experience prejudice in the Spiritist movement with, being a gay woman, right? I was told, for instance, and this, mind you, was many, 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 many years ago. And we're talking about 20 years ago. So I was told that I couldn't give passes, that I couldn't, a number of activities in the Spiritist Center I couldn't do. When I was 24 years old, when that happens, I was deeply, deeply hurt by those circumstances. I was born and raised in a Spiritist family. I have been very active in the Spiritist movement in Brazil. I moved to the US when I was 24. So that was just when I first arrived here. And I was deeply hurt. And it took me a good 10 years to heal from that experience. And what happened at the end, it was not that I forgave anyone per se, but I just came to terms with who I am. And I just work on self-acceptance. I just understood that There was nothing wrong with me. There I am a beautiful divine being, and I made peace with myself, and the understanding also that my sexuality is such a small portion of who I am, and it is divine in itself. The day I could come to terms to that, there was no longer an offense, because there was no longer wound that was touched in first place. The wound had healed. So I think this is a good example that I like to use when I talk about forgiveness. I think it's a process. It took me a long time because healing those wounds take a long time. But if we understand what forgiveness is truly about, it's certainly not about forgetting. I haven't forgotten. I'm sharing with you the experience. It's very much alive in my mind, but it has lost all the weight and all the meanings that it had at some point 20 years ago. So as we understand that and we are committed, like I said, we have the intent, don't ever, ever give up on forgiving. Understand that is a process. As long as you don't give up on forgiving, as long as you don't give up on yourself, you will come to forgiveness. It will come to you.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that personal story. And I'll say that, unfortunately, yes, there is some sort of diversity and sort of integration issues within the Spiritist community, even nowadays. I myself, as someone who is not from a Christian background, I am Jewish. That is my religious belief. And I am not Brazilian. I have, even being one of the few native British group directors here in the UK, I have faced a bit of prejudice from other people because of that fact. The fact that I'm not from a Christian background, I have sometimes received issues because of that as well. So I think if people actually read all the books by Kardec and understood this wonderful message of love thy neighbor as yourself, which has been around for about 4,500 years, then perhaps things would be a bit better. We have just two more questions left here that I think we're going to go to. So actually, Suzana, following on from what you're saying, someone has said, you mentioned we need to look at people horizontally to build a better relationships. But what if people don't look at us like that and treat us unfairly, hurt us, and take advantage of us? I think perhaps you've already answered that, but any
That's
other
theirs, no? That's theirs to be worked. But if you were in peace with yourself and you know your value and you're in touch with the aspects that we talk about, dignity, respect, and humility, then you will just move on in peace. Nothing, it's not yours. Just, don't take it home.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question, and this is mainly for Frederico because he mentioned about this, but I think for everyone here. So you mentioned about the wonderful story from Revue Spirit about going to the opera, seeing all the music there, and I think Revue Spirit contains many wonderful case studies. Do all of you think that we value this work enough within Spiritism?
I'll start just by saying that I extracted this opera attendance of Kardec from the Medium's book, but it may have well been originally published in the Revue Spirit in some year, and then he put it in the Medium's book. I'm not sure. Could be the case, but it was from the Medium's book. And yes, we definitely need to study that. Journal of Psychological Studies. Look at how ahead of his time Kardec was by calling that in the 1850s, 60s, Journal of Psychological Studies. And it's almost like the behind the scenes of the Spiritist doctrine, of all this scientific experimentation, hypotheses, trials and errors, and such a lively interaction of what ifs and possibilities that were so openly presented and discussed without any prejudice or bias, that I think we definitely could use a little more of that today. So yeah.
Okay, any last thoughts from anyone else? Any questions they want to ask each other, or any final considerations?
I would like to just thank Adam, the Kardec Group, for this wonderful opportunity, it's very refreshing to be with so many people who represent Spiritism and who can share ideas. I also would like to share. I mean, if people have more questions, this talk that we did in 15 minutes is we have a full version on our YouTube channel, just a place where we gather the work that we do. It is Suzana Simões 70. Sorry, I'm thinking Portuguese. Suzana Simões 70, and that's it. I just hope that although we're going back live in presence more, the centers are reopening. That it's just so incredibly nice to have this opportunity to chat across the globe and to meet wonderful people. Thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Pekka?
Well, I would like to also say something that there is you, Adam, and there is also Paul, and there is some other people who has been working hard to make this event happen. So first of all, I would like to say thank you for you and congratulations for also for other team, which is not actually nobody can see here, but I can tell you that it's hundreds of hours what these volunteer workers are doing. So it's good to everyone for us to recognize that. And if you have one and you have 1 minute time, so pray for them and let's send good energy for them. And secondly, I think that the latest question were quite good, that regarding this inspiration what some artists are getting. And I think that it can be also, let's say, reflected in bigger picture. So some of us, we are authors in some artists. There is Umberto and Alexander. They are making important research and study in university. They are also some way inspired in the spirits in their own activities. Same like as you, Adam, you are inspired. Same like you, Suzanne, you are inspired. And everybody who is looking this program, we are inspired in our different tasks what we are doing. So let's take a little bit small moment, pray and ask that whatever we will do, it will be well done. And I'm sure that it will be much better done than with good intuition, with good inspiration. So Adam, thank you for possibility to participate this nice event. And it has been so pleasure for me to get involved with this.
Thank you, Pekka. I do certainly hope that I'm inspired from time to time. No, thank you. Very, very kind words. Umberto, anything you want to bring to us?
No, I only have to thank you for inviting me as a feeble substitute for Alexander. And again, as in many events, I just learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's it. So let me just say once again, thank you to Frederico, Suzana, Pekka for the talks, for Alexander for his talk as well, and Umberto for your contributions here in this round table. I'll put you now all backstage and I'll come and talk to you just after the event. So let's say goodbye and thank you once again to them. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. We still don't have a winner for a bundle of books yet, so we're going to go once more, one final time, see if we can potentially find a winner. Production, please spin that wheel. Round and round it goes once more. 5th time lucky. Claudia Rocha. Claudia Rocha, if you are watching with us, please, please, please send us a message in the comments. Let's hope that you're watching with us. Rocha, if you're watching with us, please let us know and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But, well, I think that may be it for now, actually. Let's see. Nope. Okay, so let's just say thank you once more to our guests this block, which have been Alexander, Frederico, Pekka, and Suzana, plus Umberto. Thank you for being with us. Thank you to all the people who've been watching. Oh, we still have a few names we didn't say hello to. So Mariana, Helda, Rika, Ruben, Alberto, Sonia, Regina, Ilana, Roger, Anna Paula, Marlene, Natalia, Don, and Lynn. Thank you for being with us here in block 2. Block 3 even. So that's it. We'll be back with you in just 1 hour and 19 minutes from now with block 4, which will be with Anaï Fonseca, Roberto Watanabe, Dana Sisi, and Natasha Aragon. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Stay safe for the next hour, and we hope to see you back very, very soon. Thank you.